Hi, everyone. President Miller is going to be a little bit late, and so I thought that versus just starting out now, we'll wait for her to get here. So she said she'd be here shortly after 6.
feel free to jump in if I forget something here. I think I'm muted. Okay. All right. Hi, everybody. Thanks for waiting. Sorry for the delay. I appreciate everybody's flexibility this evening. So it is 6:15, or no, it's 6:14 technically. So do we want to call the meeting to order at this time? All right. Should we do a roll call for attendance?
Anderson,
Here.
Delgado,
Present.
Jacobs,
Here.
Levy,
Here.
Wong,
Here.
and Miller.
Present.
All members are present with Miller and Wong in the boardroom.
Awesome. Thank you, everybody. Let me just bump in here and make sure I'm not forgetting anything else on our agenda. Okay, great. So may I please have a motion to approve the agenda at this time?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion at this time? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
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 Is there any opposed? Okay, so we have a motion that passes here. So we're going to move on to the next item, which is just kind of the retreat piece. So I want to start by thanking everybody so much for making the time for this week, and it's really great to see everybody this evening. We have 5 main items. I'm just going to do a quick overview, and then I'd love to just introduce 2A and give everybody a chance to reflect on how that went for everybody, kind of just like what were our initial reactions. But real quick, just a quick overview for the night. We're going to talk about our communication and personality inventory that we took. We're going to offer some positive words, because I think that, as maybe we already know, but let's bring to light that we already have kind of the tools and the pieces necessary inside of all of us to be an effective, really awesome board. So I just want to kind of take a few moments to acknowledge that. We'll then talk about what the characteristics are of an effective board, discuss a few models and have some reflective discussion about that. Kind of come up with some agreements moving forward, just to affirm the positive things that we've been doing that have been working well, and then kind of just lay the groundwork for future board development. So that's what we have in store for this evening. Did everybody, first I should ask if everybody got a chance to take the True Colors survey. Was everybody able to complete that? I think so. Steph?
Yes.
Yay. Okay, good. I wasn't sure. I'm sorry if I heard there were some technical issues with some links and things, so thanks for that. All right, so I'm just looking up at the screen there. I'm just going to go across the screen and give everybody an opportunity just to share, take a minute or two and reflect on, like, how was this inventory for you? Were there any surprises? Was there anything that made you giggle? Anything that you want to point out about what this experience was like for you? And we'll just start with that. So I'm going to start with Board Member Delgado and then go to Vice President Wong. Go ahead, Board Member Delgado.
Hello, everyone. I was kind of surprised with the results, because I had done the colors personality exercise before, as part of it was like a supervisor retreat that I did with a bunch of colleagues. And at that time, I came out to be gold and blue. So my predominant color is gold, which I wasn't surprised by that. I think I do carry a lot of the traits that gold kind of outlined. But this time I came out gold and green, which I do not consider myself an analytical person. I don't really do like it, I was totally surprised. So I don't know if maybe I put too much thought into the questions and answered them in a different way or whatnot. But yeah, I was kind of surprised on that. But no, I love this exercise, and I think I don't know, I wouldn't mind doing it like every year, because it kind of reminds us, of where we are at, and even to work a little bit on ourselves, depending if there's things that you see on your like the summary that they give us. Like there were some things that were that I kind of consider as negative for a gold person. In there that I don't know if there's maybe a way that I can work through those. I would appreciate, and I would like to do that. I would like to give it a try and see if I can change any, something about myself from the different recommendations that they gave. Is that what were you looking for, Megan?
Yeah, no, I was just going to say, no, great job. I thought that was perfect. That's exactly what I was looking for. And I'm smiling because I can't remember if you had mentioned to me before that you had done this already, but, and I'll wait for my turn, but I think it's really cool that you're able to kind of see it like a difference over time, because I had a similar experience. That's really cool.
Yeah, it was kind of shocking. I mean, I think the green and the blue were kind of almost close, because the green for me was like 17 and then the blue was 14, which previously when I had done it, I mean, it was kind of close too, but the blue was predominant over the green. So yeah, but definitely I'm a gold person. I'm 21 on that. So yeah.
No, that's awesome. Thanks so much for sharing. I really appreciate it.
No problem.
Cool. Next is Vice President Wong, followed by Board Member Jacobs.
Okay, I feel like I've done this before sometime in my lifetime, but I can't recall when. So I'm going to say this is my first go around in this one. And probably not too much of a surprise. I'm not a blue, by the way. So I was a green gold. That's what I came out to be, which probably isn't too shocking to too many people. I really liked the analysis of everything. It was neat to kind of read through everything from even childhood up to the present, how people view you. Things like, Dr. Keiser and I were talking about our alone time and how important that is. And I know it is very important to me. Just some of the other things. And I think that as I read this through, and it's a great way to kind of look in the mirror and reflect and realize that, nobody's perfect. And there's things on there that I definitely can work harder at to try to make myself a better person and understand others. I also like the idea of being able to look at the different colors as well and trying to figure out how can I best work with those other people that were personality traits or stressors to me, I guess, come into play. So neat exercise. I would agree. I think that doing this each year, it can be a fun exercise and a great way to continue to develop the board.
Thank you for that. No, and I think it's really funny that you're a green gold and you talked about how you liked the analytics of it. It's really interesting now that we're like tuned into each other's stuff, how we'll notice those things. No, that was really good. Thank you for sharing that. Board Member Jacobs and then Board Member Anderson.
Hi, I am a blue gold. It was interesting. Where did it go now? I tied with orange and green, but predominantly blue. Just trying to figure out where it went. I agreed with most of it. I did laugh though, because it says that blues have trouble saying no, and I don't have any trouble saying no. If I don't want to, I don't, and perhaps that's my retirement speaking now, but I'm pretty good about saying no. I don't overload. But otherwise, I thought it was fairly accurate. I always get a kick out of doing these things. I knew that I wasn't going to be analytical, which is fine. So yeah, I thought it was kind of fun, and I'm interested. I was guessing what everybody else was, so it'll be interesting to see what everybody says. So thanks.
No, thank you. I did the same thing where I guessed everybody, and so far I've got it down to the 2 for everybody except for one person I was completely off on, which I'll share later. But as far as I know, I don't know. I have yet to hear what Board Member Anderson has to say. Thank you so much for that reflection. Board Member Anderson, and then we'll go to Dr. Kieser.
So for mine, I was a gold and green, and they were actually really close together. And as I was reading through it, it really kind of it described me fairly well. I do have a tendency, sometimes it's hard for me to say no, especially when it comes to doing tasks. Like, I always like to take on more and just stay busy. And then sometimes, like, I look back, I'm like, wow, I really just need to take a step back. And then also it said I was stubborn, which I kind of laughed about, because I know if any of you talk to my family, they will definitely tell you I'm pretty stubborn about things. So
Thanks so much for that reflection. Dr. Kieser and then Board Member Levy.
All right. Well, kind of keep the color pattern going, but I'm going to reverse the colors. I'm a green gold, and kind of like Board Member Delgado, I had done this before about 3 years ago, and surprisingly, so I'm 1 point difference between gold and blue, and significantly in the green. And 3 years ago, I was significantly in the green again, but I was blue gold with a 1 point difference. So, sharing a lot of what I read with the green, laughing and nodding my head for all the same reasons that Board Member Wong was talking about with the alone time and think space and all that. The thing that jumped out at me, I put like 2 question marks next to it, because under the section of logic and intellect, it said, place a high value on I in all forms of possession, self-affirmations, and it took me aback, because that's not how I would typically. I don't think of myself that way, and so it just, again, it caused me to think time and self-reflect on what does that mean, and so causes me to ask some other questions about myself. But that being aside, totally lot of same things of growing up and having those memories of. That's why I acted that way. So.
Thank you so much for that reflection, and thanks for sharing. Board Member Levy.
So thank you for this exercise. This was the best fortune cookie message I have ever read. And I mean that in the most positive way possible. I am a green with orange undertones. And I scored a 6 on blue. This was fun.
Thank you for that reflection. You're making me laugh under my mask here. Yeah, I was pretty close to guessing everybody's, but not as close as I thought. So that's interesting, and that'll segue into mine, I guess. So I know that I will. I want to acknowledge that everybody's talked about using this as a tool for self-improvement and self-reflection, and I think that really speaks highly to our group. It makes me feel good to work amongst people who care about, self-improvement and improvement in general, and that self-awareness. And I think that we're already off to a good start in that sense. So since you can tell how sappy I'm being right now, it's pretty obvious that I am a blue, very strong blue, followed by green, which is funny because I also took this pretty much, although the more I take this over the years, I get increasingly green. So I don't know what that means, but I first took this with my first round with AmeriCorps when I was about, I guess I was 22, and I was like 24 out of 24 blue. Like I was like the most blue, like I broke it. Like it was super blue, and then everything else was kind of lower, but I've become a lot more green over the years. So because I'm becoming more green, I want to take more time and go through and make more notes, but my general reactions to that are that this has been a really productive exercise, and as I've been thinking about how our board is working and like where I want to see us going for like our district and our community. I hope that we can set a good precedent that all of us really need to know how to be heard and also how to hear others, as we move forward in all of our work in the district. And I definitely, the thing that jumps out to me the most about Blue is, although it's a bit embarrassing to admit, I can do just about anything in the whole world for anybody if I feel like I'm being seen and appreciated. So you can all take advantage of me now because I also play into that doormat stereotype pretty well. But I think it's important for us to know, those things about each other so that we can play into each other's strengths and all the good things. So speaking of all the good things, I just want to point out then all of you have this. I'm going to screen share quick, but I'm on page 22. So let me just grab the little screen share thing. And I just want to take a moment and overview for us some good things to pay attention to here. I'll just share my whole screen. I'm on my Chromebook, so it might take a second. There we go. So as we continue to work, there is any successful group and any successful organization should adopt a mindset of just continuous improvement. And as I've heard most of you say, I think everybody say at some point this past year or so that we've been on the board together, we really appreciate data. So this really is just sort of an exercise in gathering that data about ourselves and each other just to kind of see where we're at and then just to kind of assess how best to move forward. So this part of the report is a really good tool to allow us to do that. It's titled Communicating Across the Spectrum. So if you know that we're talking to somebody who's green, you can see there's the tips for communicating with, and we have a pretty solidly green board. In fact, it looks like, if I'm tallied this up correctly, all of us are green except for one. So we're pretty strongly green at the moment, like to some extent. So allowing time to ponder, skipping the small talk, all these things probably sound familiar from our meetings. Avoiding redundancy, give the big picture a point first and then fill in the details and work backwards. And then don't misinterpret their need for information as interrogation. I think all of us probably can reflect back on a time or two or more times in our board meetings where we've wanted more information and, it's sometimes there's this balance of not wanting to come across a certain way or whatever, but a lot of us as Greens really need that information so that we can feel good about how to move forward, which I think is a concept that I want to come back to later when we get to our agreements. So that's an important thing to notice. We have some blues. We had some blues on the board. And tips for communicating with blues is just to feel so I'll speak as a flagship blue person, just to feel acknowledged, right? And Stephanie, we can hold that down, right? Acknowledge people, show appreciation, make people feel included and have patience. And, we blue people are a bit sensitive sometimes, right? So to be mindful of how we're communicating. So we have some blue people on our board. We have a pretty strong gold representation on our board as well. So when communicating with golds, it's important for us to come prepared and to be prepared to give details, to stay on target and be consistent, to be respectful, let people complete thoughts, and then and I think all of us are all of these things, but there's a strong presence of folks also who like to feel recognized. And I think that's something we all can appreciate, right? To feel recognized. And then Spencer, you're bringing in the orange here. So good job with that. So to be mindful of our oranges, keep it short and simple, right? Using sound bites. That's a great way to communicate well with oranges. Move with them while they multitask. Appreciate their flair. Allow options and flexibility, and to kind of keep things lighter. So sometimes, we green gold folks can be super serious sometimes and drill down, and we're going to count on you, Spencer, to to keep it light for us sometimes, I guess, here. No, that's good. But all of this is really about just being mindful of each other and striking a good balance, because everybody, you can see that even the way this is broken down, there's things that work well for you and things that work well for others. So nobody should be expected to yield everything that works well for them in favor of everything that works well for others, nor vice versa. Like, it's all about us being mindful of each other and kind of pointing out these strengths and being responsive to those, with the end goal of being productive and just doing the work that we need to do at our board meetings, right? So having just blabbed through all that, I want to give everybody else an opportunity, although you don't need to, I don't want to put pressure on anybody either. So let me first unshare my screen here real fast. There we go. And I just want to see, now that we've kind of like looked through pages, what did I just say, 23 and 24? I think it was 22 and 23, actually. Does anybody have reactions, thoughts, or anything that they'd like to add before we kind of move off of this and into kind of just some affirmation points about each other? You can use the chat or, just jump in or whatever works. All right, so hopefully we'll keep this in mind, and yeah, maybe we can do this again next year and see how things have changed. But I hope everybody found something in there that's helpful, just for ourselves, and hopefully we can find good skills and strategies that are helpful to each other as we continue to build cohesion as a board. So the next piece, and I have to get out my other notes for this, the next piece is to share some kind words with each other. So I don't know, I guess what I was planning on doing for this is to give every one person an opportunity each to kind of go around. It feels like the most efficient way to do this, gold people? Will that work? Like, John, do you want to have a turn to say your things to each other, and then we'll go to the next person? Kind of thing?
Every person?
Mm-hmm. Will that work?
That's
For timing?
logical.
That works? That's logical? Okay, I got the green gold stamp here. So we'll mix it up, and actually the board is reconfigured up there. So the order that I have would go board members Levy, Anderson, Delgado, Wong. I'll jump to Dr. Kieser, board member Jacobs, then I'll go last. Does that work for everybody? Yeah? All right, go ahead. Board member Levy, you want to get us started? Or do you want me to go first and give like an example?
I think I'm good.
You got it. All right, let's do it.
So I use my screen over here. So my first person is Spencer. Spencer, I appreciate that you are a genuinely kind person. I appreciate that about you. I'm sorry, board member Anderson. Board member Delgado, I appreciate your willingness to say the quiet part out loud, because that offers me a perspective that I may not have considered. Board member Wong, I appreciate you for when I first came on the board, you made an effort to reach out and call and get to know me as an individual. So I appreciate that. Board President Miller, I actually have two for you. One, as a regular board member, I appreciate your intellectual curiosity and your passion for kids and staff. And as a board president, I appreciate your intentionality to make sure that everyone is heard. And Dr. Kieser, you're up next. I appreciate your ability to make people around you feel calm and at ease. And board member Jacobs, I appreciate, and I mean this in the best way possible, your silly side. I think that has the ability to lighten the mood. Yeah. Oh, and I don't want to leave Secretary Shope out. Yeah. I appreciate your willingness to step in and be helpful. So when I email you and ask why I can't see a certain thing that I should be able to see, you will, without judgment, say, Amy, is your person colored or is your person filled in? And I'm like, oh, that's right. I might need to log in. And you do it in such a kind way. So that is greatly appreciated.
That was really beautiful. Thank you so much, Board Member Levy, for sharing. All right, Board Member Anderson, you're up next, followed by Board Member Delgado.
All right, I'm going to start with you, Megan. So the one thing I really like about you is just the ability that you have to lead your board. I truly appreciate it, and it's actually kind of fun. Next one is John. I want to say how much I appreciate you taking that mentorship role for me and helping me kind of progress and grow into a good board member. Amy, I love I love that you always stand up for what's right and what you believe in. It takes a lot to do that sometimes. Stephanie, I'm going to agree with Amy on this one. Your sense of humor it makes the board meetings fun. Kind of getting to joke around with you in the middle of them. And then Maria, the one thing I truly appreciate about you is that you're grounded. You always have good questions to ask, and you kind of keep everyone else in check with that. Dr. Keyser, the one thing I love talking to you about is science. I know every time we meet, we talk about something related to science, and it's just kind of fun. And then Michelle, I'm going to agree with Amy too. Anytime I've had issues, you've been such a great help, and I know that anytime I have any kind of problems, I can reach out to you, and you'll be there to help us.
That was also very beautiful. Thank you so much, Board Member Anderson. Board Member Delgado, followed by Vice President Wong.
I am feeling so emotional right now. It's really nice to hear from, board members on how they feel. So I'll start with Megan. Megan, I appreciate you so much. You are so inclusive. I love the way that you lead the board because you make everyone feel included and that we all have a voice. You are so responsive whenever there's a concern. And you're just caring, like by nature. You're so caring to everyone else's needs, which is just really appreciated. Stephanie, I love how sympathetic you are and just how friendly. I think we have had like great conversations where we could actually, feel like, we can have like that level of relationship, which is like really nice. Without even knowing each other, we started off like right on the, like building that friendship right away. So that was very nice. Amy, I truly admire your intelligence and the way that you are prepared for everything and the way that you come up with like questions, like how you can put together sentences and motions, and it's really awesome to see that. John, we're like gold. I feel that like you were more gold than green, but that's okay. But you're just so easygoing, and I feel that I can just talk to you about anything, and you can give me a perspective that I will understand, and I really appreciate that. And just being available whenever, there's questions or there's just anything that needs to be discussed. I appreciate that too. Spencer, this is going to sound funny, but I really thought that you were like a full orange. I don't know. I consider you like adventurous. And I don't know if it's because I see your pictures on a plane. I'm like afraid of heights. So that to me is just like, wow, like he's doing this like so adventurous. And you just seem like a very fun person to me. And I appreciate you very much for being on the board. Dr. Keyser, I love our meetings, our monthly meetings. I think we share a lot of insight on leadership skills. I love your leadership style. I think we coincide with a lot of things. So I do appreciate that. And I like having those conversations with you. So thank you for that. And Ms. Shope, I appreciate you so much for always being available and just filling us in and responding to us whenever we need you, which is a lot. And I am sorry that we take a lot of your time, but I really appreciate you being available. So thank you. I think I got everyone, right?
Yeah, you did. Thank you so much, Board Member Delgado. That was really cool. Very beautiful. I'm just going to tell everybody that you're beautiful because you are. So cope. Okay. For Vice President Wong, and then we'll go to Dr. Keyser.
Okay, I'm going to start out with Spencer, and I have a couple of things for Spencer. First of all, an extremely kind and humble person. I give you a lot of credit, Spencer, for jumping into the fold at your age. To be your age and to take on this position is a big undertaking, and I give you a ton of credit for that. Stephanie, I really appreciate your technology knowledge. I'm just kidding. No,
Not interrupt you. I beg your pardon. Oh God, Mr. Wong, you need to go to the corner after this is over. Thank you.
I know.
It does say that Greens have a wry sense of humor.
Yes. No, Stephanie, your love for everyone is what I adore about you. You just nothing. You can be upset with somebody, but at the end of the day, your just love for everyone around you is wonderful. Amy, your attention to detail and your intellect. I'm not as detailed, which is very obvious in a lot of cases. I like to look at more big picture things. You get down into the details. You like policy, which I think is great because I don't like policy. But I appreciate that tremendously, and it challenges me, and I like that. I like to be challenged. Megan, you let's see, what did I have on here? Your openness. I thoroughly have enjoyed getting to know you over the last couple of years. It's been really fun. I enjoy the conversations we have together and just getting to know each other. And you're extremely open-minded. You're willing to listen, and also I think that, but realizing that you want to be heard as well. And I think that we've had some great conversations about a number of things and I look forward to that more in the future. Maria, you are extremely well thought out. And when you brought up the one thing a couple of weeks ago, I think it was, about your feeling of challenge of the English language, and my comment to that is, you don't have a challenge at all there. I think your ability to really think things through and ask solid questions is fantastic, and I really respect that tremendously. Dr. Keyser, I've enjoyed our monthly meetings. I've enjoyed getting to know you. I think that there's a lot of similarities between you and I, and that's probably sometimes I feel like I'm looking in the mirror. So I appreciate that about you. And Ms. Schopp, your knowledge in history and your even keelness, your ability to just kind of cruise along. And yes, things do get upsetting from time to time, but you just plow ahead. But your history and knowledge of this district is second to none. So thank you for all the work you do.
Thank you so much. That was also very beautiful. I appreciate you sharing everything you shared. We're going to go to Dr. Keyser next, followed by Board Member Jacobs.
All right, I'm going to follow the screen as well, and so I'll start with Amy. Amy, I also had your intellect. I appreciate a ton, and I don't share it enough, how you help clarify my thinking and help make me a better person, produce better reports and presentations for the board and the community. Spencer, I appreciate your genuine curiosity and desire to learn, just the conversations and even the times that we've been able to be in buildings, and just the questions you ask, not only of me, but just the principal and the teachers that are in the hallway. Maria, I too appreciate our conversations. I really appreciate you being a thought partner and helping think through just different topics and ideas, and how your work and the work that I do intersect, and talk about that intersectionality. John, I also enjoy the conversations that we have. I really appreciate your systems view on things, and it is a comfortable space for me as well. So, yes, I don't think we've ever started and ended, and we've started on time. We've never ended on time because we usually end up talking well over our time. Megan, I appreciate the ideas that you come up with, and you're just, well, let's try this. Well, okay, I hear this, and then I think it makes me think of it. So your boundless level of ideas, and then just positive disposition. There is every answer is like, oh, that's okay. No problem with that. So I absolutely appreciate you're always looking on the sunny side of things. Stephanie, I enjoy our check-ins. When I see a text from you and say, "Do you have time for a talk?" I know that we're going to have a great conversation, and whether that is just a clarification or setting agendas, I appreciate the times that we get to talk with one another and check in. Michelle, I don't know if I would be as successful in these past 8 months if it weren't for your help and tutelage and as it was said before, the institutional knowledge that you bring and helping to answer the questions about how have we done things so that I can learn and understand before I speak and make decisions. I truly appreciate that. And I feel like I forgot someone. I did get Spencer. I had to use the screen because otherwise I would probably skip someone.
Thank you. Thank you for the beautiful reflections and for sharing. And then Board Member Jacobs, you're next.
Okay, I'm going to go from the bottom of my screen and go up. So Michelle, you're up first. Michelle, you are the glue. And your knowledge and your history of the district is phenomenal. And you're always so good-natured when I text or call you at the 11th hour. And I just think you're awesome. So I've known Michelle since I first got here, and she's just been outstanding. And then Dr. Kieser, you're next on my screen. So Dan, you are very calm, and I love that. You have brought stability that was much needed to our district. And I love that you can see the big picture, that you are very forward thinking and you have vision, which is extremely necessary in your position. And I am so grateful that we have that. Megan, what I appreciate about you is your passion and your continual love of learning. And I can always pick up the phone and call you and text you as well and know that I'll always get a response back. And I think you've done an amazing job as our board president. Mr. Wong. John, one of the things I love best about you is that I can tease you. We can tease each other back. You have a great sense of humor. I love your responsibility. I think you're an extremely responsible man. I think that you are very dedicated to making our community a better place, not just with the board work, but with the other boards that, just not the school board, but the other boards and the other things that you and your wife do for our community and have done and will continue to do is just wonderful. And these are all, even if I forget to say I appreciate this, please forgive me because that's what I'm meaning when I'm speaking. Miss Maria, I feel the same way about our talks. And you are such a caring person and so honest. And when you speak, you are so thoughtful and respectful. And I just think I think everybody on the board is I would consider a friend. Spencer, I think Dan said the same thing, and I had written it down ahead of time before he said it. I have curiosity and desire to learn. You're fun. I give you a lot of credit for your age, and we've talked about that. I'm going to echo what John said. Not many young men your age would take on this task and do such a great job at it, and I really appreciate you for that. Oh, Miss Amy. Okay, Amy, like John, I love how we can tease each other and giggle. And I really appreciate I think you're very analytical, very precise, and very detail-oriented, which is a great strength that you bring to the board, and I really appreciate you. And I think I've gotten everybody.
Thank you so much for sharing, Board Member Jacobs. It's so weird to do that. I think, can we call first names? It's like a touch-feely moment, and I'm a blue. Thank you, Stephanie. That was very beautiful. And I'm really glad that I get to go last, unless I'm going to offer. Michelle, I didn't put you on the spot here to do, so I'm not going to put you on the spot. I'm just going to say nice things to you. Is that okay? Okay. So what I want to say to everybody is, I guess what I'd written down across the board for everyone is just I really appreciate everybody's genuine passion for service and for our students that all of you bring to this team. And just kind of the wisdom that we kind of cultivate together as a group. So I first want to just give everybody a shout out. And it's a very humbling experience for me to be on this board with people who I admire, and I just want to take a moment to share those things with you. So I'll just go in the order that I wrote this stuff down earlier. So, okay. All right, Dr. Kieser, I really appreciate your flexibility, and I think that sometimes people, like when I've been described as flexible before, sometimes I think it's not always a strength. With you, it is such a great strength, and in many ways, it's your flexibility and your willingness to consider all sides of something and to weigh it out against what you know is best and make things work, which gives me a lot of faith for how we're going to move our district forward. I think just the versatility that you bring is really important, and I really appreciate that about you. Spencer, I had also written down, I really appreciate your inquiry. I think that you have a great perspective from being a graduate of Beloit and from having spent time after you graduated at the schools, and just that, again, I'll just echo the curiosity that you bring, I think is a great strength to our team. Maria, I wrote down that I really appreciate your leadership perspective and how much you care about the feelings of other people. I think is a very big strength that you bring to the board. Stephanie, I really appreciate how candid that you are and how you're not afraid to take a lone position when you feel strongly. I think you're unshakable, and I really appreciate that about you. Amy, I had written your integrity is, I agree with that everybody else said too. You are so precise in all the things that everybody said, but I think you bring a great sense of integrity to the board with everything you do. You are so driven to do things the right way, and it's so clear to see both your passion and your compassion in your work, and I really appreciate that about you. Michelle, I wrote down that you are so trustworthy, and you instill in me personally, just a great sense of trust, and just you're so persistently kind, and I really appreciate that about you and the work that you bring to our group. John, I have also really, really enjoyed our friendship and getting to know you the last couple of years, and I really do appreciate how open-minded you are, and it's a bridge builder, and that's a really big strength for our group. So I think I got everybody. This has been a really great experience to be able to do this. And I really, what I did is I wrote down notes from everybody, and I want to make us little cards for each other, sorry, so that we can remind each other. I hope everybody's feeling really good right now. That's the intention, is just focus on the positive, because we spend so many hours with each other in difficult moments, because that's what we're tasked to do. So it's nice to just spend some intentional time focusing on the positive. And I hope that we can hang on to this feeling, and I hope that it can energize us through kind of those difficult situations that we absolutely are going to have, because that's the work that we're here to do. So I guess just want to thank everybody for taking the time to think this through and to share. At this time, I'm going to share my screen here real quick. I feel like I need to take a minute to just sit with my feelings, which since it's going to take me a minute to share my screen, we'll have. So let me just pull up our notes here. Let's see. All right. Oh, that's my phone. Sorry about that. I usually turn this off. In any case, this is supposed to, who's bad with technology now? Board Member Wong. All right, here we go. Vision and purpose is our next piece. So I have this article that I wanted to share with everybody, and I don't know if we can pin the screen to make it any bigger, but hopefully you can all see it on your screens too. And then I'm just gonna run through this quick, and then I'm gonna let, I've got it, it's cool. Oh, and then yeah, if Dr. Keiser, if you wanna jump in and share your piece too, he has a piece to this as well. I think so. Oh, no, it's fine. I'm just going to open it up. It's cool. All right, but before we jump into this, hopefully we can ride this good feeling vibe and talk about, like, what do good boards look like, sound like, feel like, what essentially are we aspiring to be? We spend time as a board talking about, it's really our job to set kind of the vision and the direction for the district. And if I want to take this opportunity so that we can be reflective ourselves about what should our group be like and function like so that we can optimize the performance and the work in our district. So there's a lot of research out there that shows that effective boards are tied to districts that have higher academic outcomes. So board development and work like this is absolutely worth the time spent. So I did share this ahead of time. I'm not going to read it to you or anything. I'm sure everyone's had a chance to kind of look it over, but I will just highlight some main areas of focus. And what I'd like us to do is, after we kind of highlight this through, I'd like us to take a moment, if you don't have anything to write with in front of you, maybe just open something up, just to jot down some notes about what you're hearing in these 8 characteristics of effective school boards and what you would like to glean from this to bring to our board. Like, what ideally can we do, learning from what we're about to kind of take a look at, what can we do to make our board an ideal effective school board? And then I also want us to have some discussion around how will we know when we're doing well so that we can do some meaningful self-assessment as we progress through this next school year. So our 8 characteristics of effective school boards here. I'm sorry that it's taking me a bit to scroll. It's kind of summarized in this gray area here. So I'm probably just going to read through this if that's okay. And if for some reason you didn't get a chance to read through the article, that is totally fine because we have all year to work on this. This is, I think it's effective enough just to hear these 8 if you didn't get a chance to read. So the first one says, effective school boards commit to a vision of high expectations for student achievement and quality instruction and define clear goals toward that vision. Number 2 says effective school boards have strong shared beliefs and values about what is possible for students and their ability to learn, and of the system and its ability to teach all children at high levels. Effective school boards are accountability driven, spending less time on operational issues and more time focused on policies to improve student achievement. Effective school boards have a collaborative relationship with staff and the community and establish a strong communications structure to inform and engage both internal and external stakeholders in setting and achieving district goals. Number 5 says, effective boards are data savvy. They embrace and monitor data even when the information is negative, and use it to drive continuous improvement. Number 6, effective school boards align and sustain resources, such as professional development, to meet district goals. Number 7, effective school boards lead as a united team with the superintendent, each from their respective roles with strong collaboration and mutual trust. Number 8, and the last one that I'll read out loud, and then we'll take a moment to reflect. Effective school boards take part in team development and training, sometimes with their superintendents, to build shared knowledge, values, and commitments for their improvement efforts. So it's 7:02. Why don't we take 5 minutes? And jot down some notes. If anybody needs this form, it's here attached in board docs. Is everybody okay with taking a 5-minute kind of break to write down some notes? do you want me to continue to share my screen?
Megan?
Yes, ma'am.
Just for clarification, when you say notes, do you want us, just our reflections on those 8?
Yeah, so that's a good clarification. So what we're going to do is take a moment to jot some ideas down, and then we're going to share those ideas with the intention of setting a vision for ourselves and like how do we want to be as a board, and then to talk about how will we know that we're doing well. So those are kind of the
Okay.
2 focus points. Does that make sense?
Yeah, thanks.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Take it about 30 more seconds, then we'll all kind of come back together here. All right, thank you. So at this time, I don't know about everybody else. I wrote down like 4 or 5 different points. So if you want to take a second and prioritize the point that you want to share about like what did you glean from this article, and what were your reflections on how we can use it for our own work as a board, start there, and then we can round robin through as many times as we need to. What I've got on our screen here is some notes that I'll then share out with everybody when we're done this evening about what is our vision kind of for who we are and what we need to accomplish as a board and how will we know when we're doing well. So let's keep it just to that first one. So like, what did you glean from the article and what are your reflections? And here, I made a list. So I'm just going to go down. I'm going to start with board members Anderson, Delgado, Jacobs, Levy, Wong, and then Dr. Kieser, if that's okay, and then I'll jump in at the end. So board member Anderson, what are some takeaways that you got from the article, and what would you hope to apply to our own board work?
I'll just stick with one, so then everyone has kind of a chance for their input. But the major one that I think is good for our board is constantly doing like that professional development as a board, working together, attending different conferences together, and continuing to learn. Even like right now, we're having a meeting to just work with each other and kind of understand each other better, which is going to intentionally make us a better board.
Thank you for that. I'm going to try and keep up as best I can with notes. All right, thank you so much, Board Member Anderson. Board Member Delgado.
I think it's very important for us to define clear goals and expectation. I think that once we are able to define, what our goals are and just set those clear expectations for everyone, and I don't know, this could go, in many directions. It could be specific to board, goals and expectations, or it could be, district wide. But I think to start out, we should be able to define goals, to set goals and define clear expectations for board members to go by. That's kind of like, I don't know, going like by your Bible kind of thing, At least that's how I, put things together in my head.
Thank you very much. All right. Sorry, still keeping up with notes here. All right. Board Member Jacobs, followed by Board Member Levy.
I'm just rereading 1 and 2, and I think it's critical that, and it starts at the top and trickles down. We have to commit to a vision of high expectations for our kids, and have the belief that the kids can learn. Every kid can learn, and we should do everything at our disposal to make sure that each child is given what they need in order to learn. I can't stress high expectations enough.
There's a little delay in my notes coming on the screen here, but I think I got everything down for you. Thank you very much for that. I appreciate it, Board Member Jacobs. All right, Board Member Levy, followed by Vice President Wong.
So my 1 of 2 is for us as board members to remember to focus on the work of the board with an outcome of helping our students, our staff, our community, and not focus on personalities or personal issues, to not let your feelings about the messenger prevent you from hearing the message.
Thank you so much for that. Vice President Wong, followed by Dr. Kieser.
I guess my comment's going to be on let's see, it's focusing on number 4, which is effective school boards have a collaborative relationship with staff and community and establish strong communication. Along the lines of, it's not just the students that we have to have high expectations for, but I think that we also need to have high expectations for everyone within the district. All staff members, administration, superintendent, board members. I think that, I don't know if this has always been the case over the years. I feel as though it's always, we've kind of, as perhaps chaos has been going on, expectations have declined. And we need to raise that bar and continue to raise it, not only for our students, but for everybody that works in the district. But this also comes along with accountability and strong lines of communication, which I think have lacked in the past, and I think that we've been doing a lot to improve that.
Thank you so much, Vice President Wong. Dr. Kieser?
Actually, Board Member Levy and Vice President Wong had taken the two that I had talked about. So I absolutely agree with Board Member Levy on focusing on the work of the board, and I would add on to that. From my point of view, is being able to get as much of the information and answering questions of board members before the board meeting, so that it can be focused in on the agenda item and the discussion of that item at the board level.
Thank you so much, Dr. Kieser. I actually had to kind of slap my wrist a little bit because I, like Maria said, like I got right into like the goals and like the vision setting, and I started jotting down notes about that. So I won't share those because I feel like that's maybe a little later. But I just think I'll summarize. I guess my most important point that I would want to share is just that each of us have a shared vision that is expansive enough to include everybody's, just to bring cohesion to our board, because a lot of us have passions and not all of us are going to not all of us are going to agree all the time on how to execute the best interests for our kids in the district. So I just think that if we broadly commit to work cohesively for what's best for all children, I think that's like a shared value that we all already have, that we just need to kind of clearly state and frame around our board activity. And I guess I will dip in a little bit, and I think part of that vision has to be using data and what I wrote down was to use data and accountability as a board to make sure that our agendas align to that data and accountability around, equity, access, and inclusion for all of the kids in our district. So I'll work on typing that out. But really what it got down to me was cohesion and then alignment, so that the work of the board really like aligns to our values and what we're trying to accomplish would be a more concise way of saying what I wrote down. I'm going to go around a second time, and if you don't have something or if it's already been said, that's totally fine. This is like a no pressure, low stakes kind of thing. It's just an opportunity to share. So Board Member Anderson, did you have anything else that you'd like to contribute?
The only thing with the communication side of it, I would say, is just working on making sure that we are constantly communicating better with the community, so that they're aware of all the good things that we're trying to do within our district.
Thank you so much. As I write that down, Board Member Delgado.
Can you come back to me for that one?
Absolutely. I need a second to catch up on writing notes anyway. Board Member Jacobs.
I'm squinting, and I don't think I see it, and I don't think I heard it. Data, I think we really need to be data savvy. I would love to see more data coming at us in the future. So, and of course it's been COVID, so it's been strange. But I'm looking forward to the time when we have more data that we can look at. And I like the comment where they embrace and monitor data, even if the information is negative, because that's important. I do agree with that statement. It's very important to drive continuous improvement.
Thank you so much, Board Member Jacobs. Board Member Levy?
So it sounds like most of us are on the same page with establishing goals, but not ignoring goals that we've already established. So what I mean by that is revisiting those short-term goals and to make sure that we have consistent follow-through, that we're reporting out on progress or lack thereof. The progress we can celebrate. If we're not progressing, then that's a red flag that we don't necessarily need to change our goal, but we do need to adjust our strategy.
Thank you very much, Board Member Levy. Board Member Delgado, do you want me to come back to you, or should I go to, otherwise next I'm going to go to Vice President Wong. Board Member Delgado.
I am ready.
You're good. Go ahead and jump in.
Okay. So one that I didn't see that it's been mentioned there is the team building development. I think that that's kind of what we're doing right now, but I think this is just invaluable. It's much needed in order to have a cohesive board team. I think that if we continue to do activities and maybe schedule them throughout the year, this will help to build a better team.
Thank you so much, Board Member Delgado. Vice President Wong.
I'm actually going to add on to the communication piece that I talked about, but I think that it's critical, as I kind of was reflecting a little bit about, it's easy to be judgmental, and I think that we hear this a lot from constituents and other people that we speak to from outside of the community and within the community. We need to understand that, there's a lot of obstacles that we do face within the district. And those that are working here, as long as we have strong lines of communication with all staff members, and like I said before, it needs to go up and down the ladder, very good lines of communication. Being empathetic towards everybody involved and understanding that hopefully everybody is trying to do their best. And if there's a rock solid evaluation process going on, then that would be able to help us out to determine how everyone is doing. But I think that was just a key part that I wanted to add into that, because I just don't want people to feel like, oh, we need to make everybody accountable, and as soon as they don't do what we tell them to, then it's going to be bad news for them. We need to be understanding and all work together towards the one common goal, and that's student achievement.
Thank you so much for that. I'm hearing a lot of really good words like communication and empathy and, accountability. I think all of us have hit some pretty important concepts so far. So thank you so much for that. Dr. Keister?
First, I have to turn on my mic. As I'm reading through that one that I think we've talked around, but I don't see explicitly on there, is the work of the development of the team. And as we work to build that vision and planning and accountability and continuous feedback, I think it's also about focusing on how we want to operate most effectively. We certainly operate through as a team, we have two ways that we can operate. We can operate through policy. We can also operate through resolution. And so figuring out as a team when is each mode the best is, I think, a area that we can focus in on.
Thank you so much for that. Then that's a nice segue into the next piece. I guess I don't think I have anything particularly new to add. I guess I have the benefit of kind of looking this over, and I will just highlight, not to be overly diplomatic here, but I guess I just want to I just fully agree with everything that everybody has shared. I think that it's really important for us to have accountability and continuous progress monitoring driven by data to adjust. And I think the role, as we fully develop the role of the board in terms of dealing with the what, I think that's going to be really important information so that we can have productive conversations with our administration for how we can support them in the how, and so how we can clarify those communication points. So we can be really clear on what we're looking for and why. They can be really clear on how they need to execute it and why, right? So just again, the word that I'll overuse this evening is cohesion. So in the interest of all that, I think all of this is great. So I'm going to save these notes, but before we move off, there's one more piece under this agenda item that I'm going to let Dr. Kieser share. Just because I think this is a great list doesn't mean we're all finished. So I just want to do a last call. Does anybody else have anything they'd like to share from their reflections on the article?
I have one more.
Go ahead, please.
Number 7, and no one touched on this. At least I didn't see a lot of it. But number 7 just really stood out for me. And I think that in the same way that we've been working on, getting trust back from the community and, the district as a whole, I think as a board, it is just so imperative and important for us as board members to trust each other and to really build on that relationship and work collaboratively and try to seek understanding, for different perspectives. I think that that's just a huge part of, being part of the board and, as a team as well, building up on that trust. I think it's just important.
Thank you so much for that. Is there anything else that anybody else would like to contribute? Then at this time, Dr. Kieser has a piece that he wanted to share just about different styles of board governance. And so I'm going to let him speak a little bit about that, and then we can kind of similarly reflect. I'm going to stop sharing my screen though and give him some space to do that. And so we can kind of reflect on where we are, where there are differences, where there are similarities, and maybe where we're headed. Are you good, Dr. Kieser?
Yes.
Cool,
Thank
thanks.
you.
Yep.
Thank you, Board President Miller. So as Board President Miller and I were talking about the agenda and sharing ideas. One of the things that I had shared with her, and she suggested that I add that to our agendas for tonight, is the attachment that you see here. And it's a piece of Hanover research. It's a few years old, but they did a meta-analysis of board superintendent collaborations, and as part of our retreat and focusing in on how we continuously improve ourselves as an organization, I shared this, and when we were talking about these particular topics, the topic of, well, what are the different types of board governances? So I'm going to share my screen, and if you have the time to read 25 pages of research-based reports, feel free to print this off and read it. But I'm going to just draw ourselves to the last third of this, or last quarter of this report on page 21, where it talks about policy governance. And so we've heard, at least in the short time that I've been here, we've talked about policy governance, but policy governance is actually a fairly broad term to talk about how boards operate. And it has a specific component to it, but it also is being used as a broad language. As we talk about what we just did in what a board and superintendent relationship looks like, sounds like, and feels like, we're really starting to talk about what are the qualities that we feel. And I feel it's very important that, from my perspective, we start with those questions first and not look at necessarily the research right up front. Now that we've done that and we reflect on the list that we have talked about, it's an appropriate time to at least sit down and think, okay, if we think about this in terms of governance structures, There are 6 here that are listed, everything from traditional nonprofits to policy governance, all the way to corporate and collectives. And what they do is, this is just a list that breaks down different functions of the board and the executive team, or in this case, the administrative team, and whose responsibility under each of those. I offer this up as a way of self-reflection and saying, is there a particular style that we feel is more where we are? And then is there a style in which we want to work towards? So in the same effort that we talk about continuous improvement and goal setting, we can use a tool like this to go through reflectively and say, what's our belief around board function versus setting direction and doing the work? And then as you continue on down, talk about the type of membership. Some of these things are already set for us in policy, but the roles, responsibilities, and then decision-making and accountability. So as we go through this, we can use this potentially as a tool of saying, okay, based on what we know now and our conversation, this is where perhaps we would place ourselves. But then ask ourselves, where is that where we are happy and we want to grow, or is there a place that we want to strive towards? And then we can actually set ourselves some goals and action steps to say, how do we get from where we are to where we want to go?
So just to clarify, if you're looking at that attachment, it starts on page 21. So why don't we each take, I don't know, why don't we just take another 5 minutes to like read that over, read it through, and then we're going to mark 2 things. 1, where do you feel like we are? And then 2, where do you feel like we should go in order for us to be able to work toward kind of the discussion that we just previously had? So before we go do that, does anybody have any questions or clarifications that they'd like to offer?
I do have a question. Okay,
Go
so
ahead.
we're looking into the figure 2.1, the comprehensive policy governance and alternate governance structure.
Correct.
So it's just the difference between those two, like policy governance and alternate governance structures. I guess I'm not really seeing like.
You want to explain kind of like that spectrum?
Sure. So, Board Member Delgado, so again, when this article, if you take the time to read the full article, they really talk about the idea. So the idea of policy governance actually has a specific model to it, and that's in that second column. However, when we talk about policy governance in terms of what's the governance of the board, the structure of the board, and how the board operates, they actually in this analysis really looked at 6 different models, where policy governance is one of them. What I'm suggesting is, now that we've had some time to ask ourselves, what is our role? What do we see based on the 8 attributes of a high-performing board? Where do we fall on this? And then where do you think we should go? You could say we act more like a traditional nonprofit, and I'm happy with that. Or you could say we act like a traditional nonprofit, and I want to work towards collective governance. That's what Board President Miller was asking.
So I think basically what you want to, like my approach to this is I'm going to read through each of these columns, and I'm just going to kind of look through and see like, for example, like what's the executive and board relationship in each of these columns look like, and kind of where do I think we best fit, and what do board functions look like in each of these 6 columns, and where do I think we currently best fit. So I'm going to try to identify as much as I can, like which of these 6 styles I think we most fit into right now. And then I'm going to read through and think about like which is the ideal. So we can take more than a few minutes to do this. That's fine. So take your time and look through, and it's almost sort of like a self-assessment. And then which of these seems like the most appealing way for us to govern in the district here. Do you have additional questions?
I am good. Thank you for the clarification. That helps.
Oh, no, absolutely. Sure thing. Does anybody else have any questions? Okay, so it's like 7:34. Why don't we just kind of come back at like 7:40? I'll check in at that point. I'm just checking in. If you need more time, that's fine. So right now it's 7:40. Does anybody need more time at this point? You just go ahead and unmute and let me know. Okay, so hearing none, I guess we'll get started in our discussion. So why don't we first just go around and say, I know for me, I've got I'm a little column A, a little column B, so I'll just normalize that if anybody had a hard time committing to where we think we are right now. Why don't we just kind of go around and say, where do we think we are right now? And if you feel like you need to explain why, that's fine. Otherwise, if you just want to say where we're at, that's cool. I'm going across my screen here. I've got board members Delgado, Wong, and then Dr. Kieser, then board member Levy, then Jacobson, Anderson. So why don't we start with you, board member Delgado? Where do you think we are right now?
I feel that we're very policy driven. We're policy governance. I feel that that's where we're at right now. I would love to see us work collectively. That would be like an ultimate goal, but that's just me. Thank you.
All right, thanks. Well, actually, that was short and sweet. So if everybody else wants to give their recommendation for where we're going right now, that's cool too. All right, go ahead, John.
I'm going to say ditto. I think that we're very policy driven. I like there's a few pieces in the corporate, but there's a few that I completely dislike and are inappropriate for our style. But I would have to say the collective to me would be an ideal situation.
All right, thank you. Dr. Kieser?
Okay, well, this is going to be interesting because I picked the same two, but in the opposite direction. I agree. There's certain functions that don't apply to a school district, but I feel like we're more of a collective governance at this point, and I would actually like us to see move more towards policy governance.
Sounds good. All right, board member Levy?
All right, I'm going to give my 2 cents, and I love an example. So I think we are at policy governance, and that's where I would like for us to remain. But just some clarification from my colleagues that believe we are either at collective or should be at collective with using an example. So let's say school reopening. From my understanding of collective, as it's presented here, if that's where we were, that would be shared decision making, which I'm not sure how that would work. But then, like the setting direction, that means that the board would be and the staff would be involved in not only the reopening decision, but what that looks like. And I just don't think that's an appropriate place for our board to be. In the how, I think we need to remain in the what.
Thank you for that example, board member Levy. Does anybody want to address that at this time?
I think with the collective, there's set distinctions where it would be governed by the board, but with share opinion or share input from executive. The only part where I see that staff would be involved is on doing the work. But besides that, everything else is pretty much just executive and board. At least that's how I understood it. I'm sorry if maybe I misinterpreted that in the collective side, but that's how I took it. So it would not be, because a lot of the different functions, if you look at it, it's not necessarily collectively making the decision, because for some of them, there's board makes that decision, but with taking into consideration suggestions from executive or from administration per se. That's how I read it.
Thanks. Board member Levy, did you have any other comments?
No.
Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. Go ahead. Yeah.
Sorry. No, and board member Levy, and I appreciate the example that you threw out there. So I'm looking at the role of the board and the role of the executive under collective. So in the situation for the reopening, the final decision was with the board. and the board is also expecting to monitor the how is the reopening going, and the role I feel my role is as a guide on the side, giving my input, knowing that the board is the ultimate decision maker. And in policy, I feel like in a policy governance, the role of the board would be to say, here are the parameters in which we would expect decisions to be made, and then the role of the executive would be responsive to those broad guidelines, and then keeping the board informed of that. So that's just kind of that's how I'm looking at those two columns.
Yeah, I'll chime in on that as well. And that's how I viewed it as well. I mean, if you look at the board role and the executive role, specifically with the collective column, it does specifically state final decision on matters is with the board and monitors operations, whereas they're guided by the executive or the executive role. So that's kind of how I was looking at it, and is in regards to that specific example.
Thanks. Go ahead, Board Member Levy. Did you have anything else that you wanted to clarify?
Nothing new to add. Thank you.
All right, thanks. No, that was really good to hear everybody's perspective. I'm glad you brought that up. Board Member Jacobs, followed by Board Member Anderson.
Okay, just to clarify, so you want to know where I think we're at right now?
Yeah, if you want to say like where I guess what we've been doing so far is where do you think we are now and where do you think would be a good place to go? And so far, like Board Member Delgado said, now she feels now we're in policy, would like to see us go collective. Board Member Wong said the same thing. Dr. Kieser said he feels currently we're at collective and want to head to policy. And Board Member Levy said she believes we're at policy and would like to remain at policy.
Well, I think we're a mix of traditional and collective, if I'm understanding all of this.
Sure.
And honestly, I'm not sure where I want us to go. I want to listen more and get some more input.
Just like a good green person would do. Sounds good. Board Member Anderson?
I'm green.
I know. Well, everyone's a little green. It's cool. All right, Board Member Anderson?
For me, I kind of agree with Stephanie that we're kind of in the traditional and the collective. I do like the characteristics of collective just because it's a team effort. The thing I really would like to see if we can add is for the collective, they didn't have committees listed, but I think it's important for us to be able to have committees there to kind of take up some of the workload of the board, and it also allows us to get some of that work done leading up to the meeting.
So I was thinking carefully about what you said about committees, and I think I may have missed. Did you say, and if you didn't, it's fine, where you'd like to see us go?
I want to see us go towards collective.
Okay.
But like I said, I want to still have committee structures there.
So and just to clarify, do you feel like right now we have, when you said currently we have a kind of traditional / collective, do you feel like right now the committee structure fits in that traditional column?
Yeah, I do.
Okay. I thought you did. I just wanted to clarify. Thank you very much, Board Member Anderson. That's really interesting. So far we've got, where we are currently, we've got policy, collective policy, a mix of traditional and collective. And just to throw a wrench in there, what I had written down was, I feel like currently we're a mix of traditional and policy. So, and it's interesting that, Spencer, that you just said that, because I feel like our committee structure, at least the way I read it, is more represented in that traditional nonprofit model than anything else. But I think that a lot of it, I felt like for me, it was like 60-40 to like policy and then just like little bits of traditional. So I'm going to just jot that down for me. I said, I'm going to write traditional / policy. For those of you who said collective, which I think are Maria and John, at some point I'd like to hear more, and Spencer a little bit more too, like which horizontal pieces appeal to you about collective? Because like conceptually, I like the idea of cohesive shared leadership, but when I go through each piece here, I tend to agree that I agree with Spencer that I like the traditional nonprofit committee structure that we have right now, and I think it's something that we can expand on to even further match that model. But I still I'm a little more gearing toward policy because I feel like there are opportunities for shared leadership within policy. So that's where I guess I was having a hard time committing. So since I'm going to make myself commit, what I'd say where I'd like to see us go is I would like Spencer said, to maintain that kind of traditional committee structure. I'm going to just more broadly commit to policy, but I'm open to hearing what other people's thoughts are on specific, on those specific pieces, those horizontal pieces. So, one of the things that we talked about wanting as a board was like a shared vision on where we're going. And right now we're kind of spread for where we want to head between collective, policy, and then just like that traditional committee structure. So it sounds like, and I'm not sure what the most effective way to do this is. So if somebody wants to tell me I'm wrong, that's totally cool. If we look at each of the functions, I wonder if we almost want to make, I don't know if we need the time to go back and reflect or not. Although I want to, before I go forward, hear Dr. Kieser's perspective as an administrator on which functions do you think would be most important for us to kind of hone in on when we're making the determination for where we want to go. For example, I noticed like some of these, like the fiduciary responsibilities, I would hope is pretty clear to everybody. Human resources, things like that, it seem like a little lower on the rung. I mean, it sounds like these are things that I don't think are big areas of concern, but maybe I'm wrong. So I guess I want to start with Dr. Kieser, like which of these, and I didn't count how many there were, but which of these functions do you feel are most important for the board to kind of have that shared vision around? Put you on the spot here.
Not to put me on the spot, and for a green who likes to be reflective and take their time. No pressure.
Not at all.
So to me, I think when we think about the horizontals here, the things that my eye draws to, I do agree with the committee structure. I think that because we are a community and a board that believes in a committee structure. I think the roles of the board and the executive, I agree the fiduciary is pretty straightforward, as well as HR as far as pieces. So skipping over those, it's not saying it's not important. It's just I would do monitor for accountability and decision making. So it would be, to summarize, the relationship, committee structure, board role, executive role, accountability, and decision making.
Okay, so does anybody want a couple? Thank you, and I think sorry for putting you on the spot, knowing that you are a green person here. So I want to make sure I have that down. So accountability. What was the last one you said?
Decision making.
Decision making. Just write it down a little faster here, Megan. All right, committees, exec/board, board role, and exec role. Do we want to take a few minutes, just kind of go like more carefully through and say like of those 6 functions, and like some of us might not need to at all, but just to give some of us time that are maybe in between, which is half of us right now are in between people, and say which style most closely aligns to what you want to see for, again, those 6 pieces are decision making, accountability, committees, the exec/board relationship, the board role, and the exec role. Are we okay taking about 5 minutes to do that and then reporting back to see if we can bring ourselves a little closer in alignment?
Can you repeat those again?
Certainly. So we are looking on the far left of the chart here. That column is called functions. And so of those functions, we are looking at, here I'll go in order for how they're listed on there. Executive/board relationship, followed by committees, followed by board role, followed by executive role, followed by monitoring for accountability, and then the very last one, which is decision-making power. So if we want to go through those 6 functions and mark off which vertical column, which of those 6 styles do you think most reflects where you want to see us going? That's a good clarification. Does anybody else have anything to clarify or ask before we move forward?
Yeah, Megan, Vice President President Miller. You lost me. I was following you from committees, board role, executive role, and then you jumped over fiduciary, right? And then went to financial, and then monitoring accountability.
Yeah, here, I'm going to read it back one more, and it can be more than one more time. I shouldn't say one more time. Let me read it back again. So,
Hey,
go
one
ahead.
sec. So I was gonna say, could you just throw it in the chat box for us?
Oh, you're so smart. Look at that efficiency. I love it. Yeah, I will do that right now. Thank you. Thank you very much, Board Member Anderson. So everything is now in the chat. Forgive my little typo there. So let's just kind of go through and see which of those most closely align with which of those 6 styles, and then we'll share back. Stephanie, you can, of course, always ask a question. That's fine. Do you want to ask a question right now?
I do. As
Please
I'm
do.
sitting here thinking about all of this, we are an elected board. How does the community feel about all of this?
That is
We're
a great
changing-
question. Go ahead.
We're thinking about changing the structure of our board. And when we were elected, we have, correct me if I'm wrong, but we are a traditional nonprofit. I want us to be accountable to our community. And are we putting the cart before the horse? How do we know that? I mean, I'm feeling a little uncomfortable suddenly thinking that 7 of us, 8 of us are making this decision and there's no community input.
So right now, and I really appreciate that's a really good point to bring up. So like right now, this is like a board development piece. So we're not like making like any major decisions. It's kind of like where do we see ourselves most effectively moving? Because all of these are like legitimate leadership styles, like in governance styles. So I think when Dr. Kieser and I were talking about the agenda, and I was telling him about how I wanted to go through like the 8 pieces of an effective board, which is a school board, a national school board driven article. So that's in line with what school boards would do. We talked about how it's important to have like a shared vision for how we want to govern. So this is more of like an inventory to see where we're at in terms of like what are our preferences and can we find some cohesion going forward, or kind of what is the spread for where we are. And then we can set future board development around bringing that vision closer together so that we just kind of function better. So we're not like just to clarify, we're not making any like changes to how we function as a governing board in that sense, like that the community, we're not like upending any systems. It's about style and preferences within the parameters of our elected positions. Does that make sense?
Kind of.
Okay. It's kind of just like a style thing, right? So it's like, I'm having a really hard time coming up with an analogy at this moment, so forgive me. It's more of like, which flavor do you want of the beverage that we're all like in mutual agreement upon? That's like a terrible example, but I'm looking at my Dr. Pepper, so you'll have to just kind of give me that one. But yeah, so we're not like deviating from anything that we were elected to do. There are just different styles within the parameters of what we were elected to do with which we can operate.
Okay, I think that makes a little bit more sense, and I think that would be more, I'm making an assumption, but I think that would be more palatable to the community that is listening in right now, because they might be wondering the same thing. So, thank
sure.
you.
Yeah, no, and thank you. I'm really glad you brought that up because I would love just to clarify that we're not going outside of anything or changing any systems. It's that each of us as board members has preferences for how we want to operate. And when we all kind of hear from each other, just right now what we're doing is like a check-in using this resource about like kind of where do we see ourselves now? Where do we want to head together? Because all of us are in partnership with each other to do the work of this district. And if we can come to an agreement, and if not a total agreement, some understandings of each other for how we prefer to operate, that's going to help us do that work more smoothly and more efficiently. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes perfect sense.
Okay, I just want to make sure that I'm being clear because my caffeine levels are a little low, and that means my communication efficacy drops a bit. So thanks for checking in on that. Before we move forward, let me just check the chat box to make sure I didn't miss anything because I was writing stuff down. It looks like we're good. Okay, cool. Thank you. All right. So would anybody like some more time, or do you want to just kind of what I was planning on doing for each person, but if you want to edit or modify, that's fine. I was just going to kind of go down the list and say, okay, for decision making this, accountability this, committees this, and then we can kind of just hear where each other are. And I think after just a little reflective discussion, I don't think we need to really work for this any further. I think this is going to inform our understanding of each other, and like further board development can be, we can use this to determine like what are the areas where we need support and to increase our understanding of different governance styles. Okay, so, I'm a little bit out of breath. So going across the board, I think my screen hasn't really unscrambled very much. So I've got Board Member Delgado, Vice President Wong, Dr. Kieser, Board Member Levy, Board Member Jacobs, Board Member Anderson. Does that all sound okay, or does anybody else need more time? All right, cool. Board Member Delgado, do you want to kind of tell us where you're at on each of those 6 functions?
I much on policy, pretty much for all of them except for committees. Committees, I feel that we're on traditional. Again, I would like to see us on collective, and only because I, believe in the power of cooperating and just collaborating with each other. The other thing too is I am no means a matter expert on anything that goes on in the school. For that reason, I think we do need, some guidance from executive or from our administration. And in order for, at least the way that I see it in my head, is that, in order for us to work better, like I need to have understanding of the things that they present and know the recommendations and have like a why for why they're recommending that and why that would be the best thing for us to do, and even like, with data collection and resources and, all the information that I can gather to make a collective decision on, what we're doing. So that's like my basic explanation as to why I like the collective side of it. Yeah.
No, that's really helpful. Thank you. So I just want to clarify, because we're talking about like where do we want to go? So are you then collective across all 6 of those functions, or did you want to keep traditional for committees, just to clarify?
Yes, I am pretty much traditional for all of them, and yeah, would definitely keep the traditional for the committees.
Perfect. Thank you very much. I really appreciate that. Vice President Wong?
Okay, I had the executive board relationship. I believe that was the first one. Actually, I had policy for that one. Committees, I had traditional, and then the rest I had collective.
Traditional, you have committees, and the rest are collective?
Yep.
All right. Thank you very much. Dr. Kieser?
Keep forgetting to hit the button here. I had policy for the first 4, and then for accountability, I actually had corporate, and then policy for the decision making.
Okay, was that policy across the board?
Policy with the exception of accountability.
All right, sounds good. So a little deviation, but definitely heavy on policy and collective. It's interesting stuff. All right, cool. So we've got Board Member Levy, followed by Board Member Jacobs.
Okay, so hold on, let me scroll up. For executive board relationship, I have number 2, policy and governance. For committees, I have number 1, but with the do much of the work, I think that should come from staff. And the reason for that is because that is it's going to sound kind of funny. That's their primary job. The board is not our primary job. Like most of us have other jobs, and then we do board work. So number 1, traditional nonprofit, but with that clear distinction. For board role, I have number 3, executive centered. For executive role, I have number 2, policy governance. For monitoring, for accountability, I think it should be a mix of 1 and 3. So committee oversight, but executive brings information forward to the board. And then for decision-making power, I have 2, policy governance.
Sorry, I just want to make sure I got everything down. All right, perfect. Thank you very much. Going on then to Board Member Jacobs and then Board Member Anderson.
So I have some clarification. So committee, well, I don't on committees. That would be traditional. The board role, let me scroll back. So under the policy, it says primary role to establish policy on ends, executive limit. Would you explain exactly what that means, somebody?
Board Member Jacobs, I interpreted board member or executive limits is that the role of the board is to establish the extent, the parameters by which the administrative team, or in this case, the superintendent, operates.
I'm sorry, could you say that one more time?
Certainly. So the board's role is to establish the parameters by which the superintendent has their authority. That's the limit part of it, how I'm interpreting it.
And how does that differ from the traditional? And I know you're green. I'm feeling very green tonight, actually.
No, as I'm reading, to me, Oversight of Operations, to me, what resonates with me in that situation is that the boards is in the not just establishing the what's and expecting someone else to carry out the how. They're overseeing the how.
Oh, okay. Okay then. Then I'm policy for that one. The executive role. I would like, Dr. Kieser, could you please give me a quick lowdown between the traditional and the policy from your take again?
So in traditional, the executive is being guided by the board. So in that situation, I interpret that to be the board is saying not only here's the what, but here is the process by which you should do the how, and then you carry out the how that way, as opposed to policy where being responsible to the board but not for it. Once the board has established the parameters, all of the operations, strategic, all of those decisions are left completely up to the superintendent.
Okay, thank you. And whoops, I just muted myself. Then for the executive role, I'd say policy. Policy. Thank you, everybody, for being patient with me. My cataract surgery is coming up. I really am having a difficult time reading, guys, even with my readers on, so I do appreciate the patience.
You're fine. Take your time.
So monitoring for accountability. What does aggressive executive evaluation mean under policy?
I took that just to mean that there's like your elbows deep, continuously monitoring multiple times a year, like really on top of it, versus I think it was the collective one that talks about like the exec just brings a report and then like the board just inquires on pieces. So I think the aggressively is a little bit more top down in the weeds, would be my interpretation.
Yeah, I don't like weeds. Then I would go for the traditional. I don't like weeds. And then decision-making power, and I.
Board Member Jacobs, you're muted. If you're speaking, we can't hear you. Sorry.
Oh, sorry about that. I think I'm leaning more toward the policy.
So what were your first two again? The executive board relationship and the committees?
The committees is traditional. And which other one? The executive board?
The executive/board relationship. Did you say policy for that one?
I'm pretty sure that I did. I'm trying to
Okay.
find it. I'm scrolling.
No, you're fine. I just want to make sure I have everything written down correctly.
Dan, that's what you explained, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So, and I believe I said policy, correct?
Yeah, I think you did. All right, cool. So thank you so much, and don't worry about it. You take your time. It's only 8:17. It's not even 2 a.m. yet. You guys are doing fine. I'm just kidding. All right. So Board Member Anderson, go ahead. Oh, go ahead.
Was it my turn?
It sure is.
Okay, so for the board relationships, I went with the policy. For committees, traditional, board role policy, and then the rest as collective.
All right, this has been really informative. And as I'm looking at our notes that we made earlier this evening after reading our 8 practices of an effective board, one of these that came up not only in the article but in our own notes is kind of shared vision. So I'm jumping the gun a little bit, but I think I'm going to recommend for later that when we plan for our next board development, it would be a good idea to have at least a component of it centered around maybe bringing in some guidance on how, with our different perspectives and different preferred modes of operation, that we are able to work effectively together to kind of build a shared vision there. So I think where we are now is where we are now, and I think that there's already a lot of strength to how we're working together. And so I would just recommend that when, as we close for the evening, although we have one more agenda item before that, that we consider that as a next kind of future board development piece. Before I move on, I just want to ask if anybody else has any clarifications or questions before we go into agreements.
I just want to make a comment. I think this is helpful for me to understand how everybody else is viewing our roles and responsibilities, and understanding that there are different management styles and different types of organizations that obviously have governance. And we do have different views, and that's okay. I mean, I think that hopefully we can come together and understand. And this probably explains a lot why maybe we, when we do make decisions, we're making them differently from one another.
Yeah, I would echo those comments. And just so everybody knows, I mean, I'm taking a bunch of notes, and what I'll do as a follow-up is I promised you cute little cards, but I'm going to have some takeaways and some notes that I'll send out to everybody. Just so that we have so for me, I'm a visual person, because I'll map out kind of where everybody is now, where everybody wants to see us. And again, all in the interest of building understanding and setting some guidance for future board development. Board Member Jacobs, go ahead, please.
I think Board Member Levy had brought this up earlier. We had spent a lot of time on our short-term goals before. When are we going to come back to looking at those?
That is an excellent question. So that's something I don't want to put Dr. Keister on the spot for at this moment, but hopefully one of my goals that I'd like to have us see is some alignment between those goals and our agenda items. I don't know if you want to speak to that right now, or that's something we can talk about.
It's coming up at the superintendent's board update for the 23rd.
Perfect. All right. Thank you. No, that's a really great question. And thank you both board members, Levy and Jacobs, for bringing that up. Great thoughts. Does anybody else have anything that they want to share before we move on to our next item? All right, so hearing none, I just need to recalibrate a little bit and make sure I don't miss anything. Okay, great. So the last thing that I wanted to talk about before we just kind of have some wrapping up, kind of what do we do tonight, where are we going type discussions, is agreements. And so I think I reached out to everybody in January, shortly after I took over this role, and I just wanted to kind of have some just general discussion, just kind of see where everybody was at and touch base. And what I noticed in those discussions were some common threads and some common themes. So what I'm bringing to you in this part of the conversation is a draft based on what I heard from everybody, and certainly we can discuss if, how, and what we want to kind of agree to or implement here. So I know that we have board norms, and In the past, we've evaluated ourselves as a board based on those board norms. And in working in my own profession and on this board and other boards, what I find is meaningful about group leadership work is when we, in addition to having norms, have agreements. Agreements to me build bridges, build trust, and build kind of common language and common understandings within conversations. And we know that, like we've pointed out a few times tonight, we're going to continue to find ourselves in uncomfortable positions, making incredibly important high stakes decisions in points of disagreement with each other. And so what the community has elected us to do is to make those hard decisions effectively. And if we improve the efficacy of our communication, we can do that better and, more efficiently, right? And so what I've gleaned from the discussions that I have had individually with each of you over the past several weeks are kind of these three agreements that we all seem to feel would make our board meetings more effective and more professional and more respectful. So one of those agreements would be to speak constructively, whether it's about a topic, whether it's about a group of people, whether it's about just kind of whatever we're talking about should stay issues focused, constructive, and veer away from anything that could be misconstrued by somebody as disrespectful or derogatory. So that's what's meant by use constructive language. The second one that I wanted to offer up was that I think everybody has at some point said, I think in meetings, that our conversations that we have in the work of the board when we're at board meetings need to stay focused on issues, and that of course those issues should be centered on what is best for students. Now, of course, we're going to have disagreements with each other over what and how is best for students, but if what the subject matter should be focused on the issues at hand and how those issues, the bottom line is always got to be our kids and their well-being. The third one is that as we get through and navigate these difficult discussions and these difficult situations that we're going to be in, that we assume the best of each other. So we've heard tonight that we have a wide variety, not only of different personality. It was fun, right? It was fun and self-reflective. We've heard that we have different kind of personality structures and preferences and leanings. We've heard that all of us have had something, truthful and positive to say about each other. So we know that there's a lot of strength there and that we find strength in each other. And we also know from this last exercise that we all have different ideas and approaches and style preferences for how to govern. So in all of those differences, what we need to do to navigate those conversations is to assume that every person is coming to the conversation and making statements with the best intentions so that we don't get caught into anything that's a distraction from those issues. So that is what I wanted to offer up. And I'm open to some discussion, and I'd love to get some feedback from everybody in terms of what we think about us all agreeing to these kind of tenets, or if and how we would like to change these tenets so that we can move forward and increase our professional efficacy as a board. So do you want me to go, I can go round robin at this point again like I've been doing, but I'll go backwards since my screen hasn't changed, or we can just put a thing in the chat. Does anybody have a strong opinion either way? Otherwise, I'm just going to start with Board Member Anderson. So I'm just going to put you on the spot, Spencer. What do you think? Are you okay with these agreements as written? Is there anything that you would like to change, or do you want to give any other reactions or reflections to this agenda item?
I think I'm glad that we have some agreements made, and I'm more than happy to go with them. I'm kind of curious to see what other people think that if we kind of that they would like change, but I think it's a good thing that we're doing this.
All right, thank you very much for that. Board Member Jacobs and then Board Member Levy.
Yeah, I like them. I'm just thinking out loud here. In the past and I think we've grown as a board, but in the past, I think as with growing pains, getting to know each other, sometimes words spoken have been misinterpreted. So I think if in doubt, respectfully ask for clarification. I don't know if I'm making sense here. I think we need to feel comfortable with one another, and I think we're at that point where if we're not sure of something that someone else is saying, that we can just say, this is what I'm hearing. Am I hearing that correctly?
That's a great reflection. Would you like me to add on to number 3 and say something like, assume the best of each other, and if you're unsure, then ask? Or did you just want to offer that up as context?
I'm just more, unless somebody else feels strongly about it, just offering it up as context.
Well, I really
Thank you.
appreciate that context, and I'm glad that you shared it, because yeah, I would agree that's a really good example of how we should operate for sure. Thank you so much. I lost my order of my screen because I'm sharing my screen, so now I'm going to switch to the the one up there. I do know that Board Member Levy was next, so you go ahead and then I'll figure out who goes after that.
Thank you, Board Member Jacobs, for offering that. And I do actually feel strongly about that being included in number 3. I think that has the potential to cut down on confusions. Don't make assumptions about each other. If you're really that interested, ask, and ask that person, not someone else. And I would love to have a 4th, arrive prepared.
All right, thank you. So just in the spirit of clarification, to clarify back, for language for number 3, do we want to do like assume the best of each other and then use like a semicolon or something like that, just to say that if you're unsure, can you give me an object in that sentence? Like if you're not sure of what, ask for clarification?
If you are unclear on content or intent, ask that person.
Okay, unclear, that's a great way to say it. So unclear on content or intent, then ask that person. All right, I will circle back around in case anybody else has any other thoughts and feedback on that, and that's fine. And then number 4, I'm sharing my screen from the actual, from Board Docs, so I'm not able to edit this right now. But if you give me just like a few minutes when we're done, I can like type it all up and share. Or yeah, it'll just give me a minute to switch screens, so then I'll throw that on there. But then the 4th one, before I prepared to do that, was arrive prepared. So while I switch over here to our notes, in just a moment here, and type those up. Hang on a second. I think Board Member Wong, do you want to go ahead?
Sure. I would like to, one, get clarification on number 3, and if that is to be, if we're going to ask about that, is that going to be in public or is that in private afterwards? Just want to make sure that's crystal clear. So
I'm going to jump in since it was my ad.
That's fine.
Thank you, Board Member Wong, for the opportunity to provide clarity. If it is policy and student-centered, please, by all means, get clarity in the moment. If you are curious or bothered or et cetera by something that is not policy or board, so it's a personal thing, definitely do that offline. It's just not appropriate to do in a meeting.
Thank you for that clarification. I agree 100% with what you said there. I think that yes, we'll leave it at that. Number 2, and I'm willing to hear input from others on this, and I know that this isn't always going to be the issue, but the issue should be centered on all students. I want to make sure, because I don't want it, I don't know, I just feel like sometimes, and it's not that every issue that we're going to talk about is going to include all students, but I think that we need to focus on all students, and I think sometimes there's groups that get left out.
Any other thoughts on that? Because I'll add all. Are we okay with that?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So I'm just poking around here. So I want to just check back in with Board Members Wong and Levy really quick. In your discussion, I added, so we've got to assume the best of each other. If you were unclear on content or intent, I wrote of an issue. But Board Member Levy, or Board Member Wong, do you have a better way of saying that? We good? Okay, I'll leave that. We can always we can sit on it and circle back if need be. And then we added that number 4 there. Okay, let me just check my notes and see. We've heard from, let's see, board members Anderson, board member Jacobs, board member Levy, board member Wong. Okay, board member Delgado.
I'm not sure how to word this, but I think we, I like the number 4 that board member Levy added as far as arriving prepared. But prepared might have a different meaning to each individual board member. Like, I don't know if you're expecting like people to be like detail prepared, like every single word, because like for myself, I go through the documents, I look at them over and just, see if I have any questions, is there something that I don't understand? But I totally appreciate like the presentations because that brings a lot more clarity for my own understanding because I'm a visual person. So, preparedness might mean something different for each board member. Just wanted to provide that. And also just, I think we need to be in the agreement of being understanding for each other's needs. We might have other needs. Like for instance, today I disclosed to Megan that at 5:45, I have to pick up my son from school. I'm still in the meeting. I'm still listening. I'm still, engaged. But I have to run that errand. I have to do that because I don't have any other means to get my son. So I do want others not to feel that I'm not prepared, that I'm not present, because I am. But I have family for me. Family is first. So at that time, I have to do that. So just to be understanding to other board member needs. If that's something that others agree to, I would appreciate for that to be a number 5.
Board member Delgado, would you be comfortable, and this is not, I don't want to diminish anything you just said because it's very valuable. I'm just like seriously looking in the interest of space and being concise. Would you say that falls under assume the best of each other, or would you like me to add some language about specifically using the word respect? Because I'm fine doing that. I want to clarify in terms of how to word things. But I do want to acknowledge and validate everything that you shared.
And I don't mind being added to number 3. You can, add in there just respect each other's needs.
All right, so I've got the proposed language on the board there. Does that sound good? Board member Delgado?
Yes, thank you.
All right, no, thank you, and thank you for adding the context that you added. I know I've got to go to Dr. Keiser. Did I miss a board member, though? I think that's okay. No, you go ahead, Dr. Keiser, it's fine.
No, I agree with all 4 agreements that are up there, and actually I like the idea of the number 4. My only question, this is going to highlight my lack of grammatical understanding. In 2, I would almost take the second half, issues should be centered on all students, and almost make that a separate line and call it issues and topics. Yeah. Should be centered on all students. No problem. But I understand why it was put as 1.
Oh, that's okay. Oh, hang on a minute.
Or you can indent it.
Get that away from me there. That's okay. So did you say, what was the other word?
Issues and topics.
Topics, okay. Well, I'm just gonna... Aside from some formatting stuff, does that look okay so far,
Yes.
folks? Okay, I'm gonna just fix that because it's gonna bother me. All right, thank you. Go ahead, Board Member Levy.
So my pushback on number 2, I would actually be more comfortable that topics and issues should be student-centered. But there are times that we need to focus on a segment of the population and not all students. And overall, it is for the benefit of all students. So and I know it's a little nuanced, but I don't want that to go missing. For example, one of our short-term goals was to increase reading level for our lowest scoring readers. Well, if we're focused on all readers, then that's not helping the group that needs the most help. So I think it is okay to be targeted as long as we are student-centered.
So I hope you don't mind, but I took some liberty while you were speaking, and I wrote, topics and issues should be student-centered in the interest of all students. And then I'll just add my own context there that when you have a classroom full of students whose academic, social, and emotional needs are getting met, that does benefit every child in the classroom. It's raising the floor for some, raises the learning experience for all. I want to check back. So that would be my context and my own commentary and perspective, but I don't want to take away Board Member Wong. Does the wording in number 3 meet your specific interest here?
Yeah, it does. And I like I said, I agree with what Board Member Levy said about there's going to be specific topics that are going to be addressing certain segments of the population. I guess what I was trying to point out was my concern that there's certain segments of the population that are not getting addressed, period. And that's where I think that, we overlook that, and it's like, okay, they're not getting, I guess their due attention. And that's perhaps why we see groups, some of those segments of that population exiting our district.
No, I appreciate that, and I'm excited for us to come back to our short-term goals that we made. And I think one of the notes that we made up here, I think several board members contributed, the idea of using data to drive continuous improvement, and so what the direction that we set is both with the direction that we set as a board and the direction that our administration executes those goals. And so I'm hopeful that as we come back now to those short-term goals and then move into our strategic plan, that we'll have ways of using data to continuously monitor and improve all those areas like you're addressing there. I just want to make sure that we have shared understanding, I guess, in number 3, because all of those points are valid. Is that a hand still up there? Since I'm sharing my screen, I can't click the chat without switching back over. So we're good. Okay. So I think I got everybody's. My input. I already gave my input. So I started us off with our draft. So I'm great with all of this. I guess I just want to ask, does anybody have anything else that they would like to add, tweak, or inquire about before we move on? So I guess what I will say, what I'd like to do with these agreements to make them meaningful, I guess I'll ask for some input. I'm not going to have us do like a Pledge of Allegiance before every meeting, but I might just, as entertaining as that would be. One thing that struck me is that I noticed when we do our public comment, we lay out these very extensive kind of like children are watching this meeting and make sure this and that, and we have all of this conduct kind of for people who publicly participate. And so I don't know, would we be comfortable with these just posted when Ms. Show posts our meetings? I'm not going to probably read them, but if we include these into the culture of our board meetings, just to kind of be mindful that we have these expectations for ourselves, because we are we are under the eyes of the community and the community's children. I guess I'm open to some feedback for how we'd like to see these incorporated besides just tonight, all kind of solemnly swearing and, using the Girl Scout law here to decide that we are going to adhere to these agreements. Does anybody have any thoughts or feedback on how they'd like to see that incorporated?
I think it's a nice reminder to have it in I may be asking for something that I'm not realizing what I'm asking for, but just like in our agendas and board docs, etc., where it has motion language or whatever, just to have that visible reminder. And I think it should be a norm and not considered offensive if we gently redirect each other, hey, remember we agreed to this. I don't think that should be seen as out of the ordinary.
I appreciate that feedback and that reminder. And is that something that all board members are? So, for example, when I go on like an impassioned tirade and start using colorful language about like literacy, it would be fine for Board Member Wong to say, Board Member Miller, like, please stick to our agreements. And then I'm okay with that. Is that like a scenario that we're all okay with? Hearing no immediate opposition to that, then I'll just ask board members or Board Secretary Shope, are you cool just like copy and pasting these into our kind of like our board packet essentially? I'm getting a nod. So for right now, I think that's a nice way without, we're all adults here and, but I do think that it's, just to increase some visible reminder of just the professional work that we're doing and to honor the professional work that we're doing and investing our Wednesday evening into here. We'll just kind of post those with the packet. It's a great suggestion, and we'll go from there. And because one of the bullet points that I can't remember now who somebody added was about that continuous. I think several of you talked about continuous board development and team development. This is something that we can kind of monitor and come back to. Did you have something? Go ahead.
And this is all really good for tonight, but also realizing that, in another month and a half, we're going to have one, maybe two different board members. And this is something, having been on this board for 3 years now and having served on probably 6 or 7 different boards, of which extremely different personalities. Is there any plan or is there any suggestions as far as how we can, these are good ideas, and I would say this is probably the best direction that I've seen this board go in my 3 years of being with this organization. What can we do to ensure that, or try to assure as much as possible that this continues going forward?
Thank you for that question. I'm going to address that if that's okay, but if anybody else wants to jump in, that's cool. I don't know the specific date, although Ms. Shope did already tell me, and it has slipped my mind, but the date, the first board meeting that our new board members are sworn in, I would appreciate that within 2 weeks of our new board being seated, that we have another retreat for not only the new board members, but also with our whole exec team to lay out just some basic groundwork, just some basic onboarding stuff. We can assign mentors, assign roles. And I think too, it would be nice just from my own experience, and certainly from your experience, it would be nice for us to have the opportunity too, to go through, okay, here's what this committee does and here's what it entails before we appoint those so that people can give, people work better. I know you'll agree with me on this, like people work better on the committees that they're interested in and have a desire to work on. So I think if rather just kind of like baptism by fire, which is sort of what it's been, I think it would be good for us to just like right off the bat carve out some time and space to do some onboarding and to revisit these agreements and just to revisit kind of the larger pieces here. Ms. Shope, do you want to jump in?
That's perfectly fine to do that because you have 30 days from the day that they come on. But that would mean, depending on the elections and the results of those elections, some committees may or may not be able to meet in the month of May then, which may or may not affect some board business. And typically the third Tuesday in May is when we have the meeting that talks about board members share their interest. I mean, like shortly after the election, I typically send out the form that says, let us know what positions you're interested in and what committees you're interested in. Here's a little bit of information about them. And then we have the meeting where all the board members can share and discuss like what they've served on and what committees they're in and things like that, so that the board president, whoever that might be at the organizational meeting, can do all those appointments. Doesn't have to be done that way. That's just traditionally what we've done. So it's fine to set that up to do differently. I just wanted to give you a heads up that we'll have to plan out then how you want to do those committees and how they may or may not be able to meet depending on, because you won't have 1 or 2 board members appointed to committees and such, and so how you want that to work, and we can lay that out and map that out however you want to do.
No, I appreciate that, and I would just ask, if you wouldn't mind helping, and then Dr. Kieser, if we could work with your administrative team to make a solid plan, because we know for sure an election is happening, and we know at least we'll have at least 1 board member. I think if we could do a little back planning, and then maybe at the next board business meeting or something, or whenever we have it figured out, when we do future agenda, like future meeting dates, I could just like let everybody know then, and that way if there's any anything else to discuss, we can figure it out. But I'll lean on the administration to make sure we're not messing up any board business or district business. Does that sound okay?
Perfect. Yeah, I was going to
Okay.
say, make sure we map out the dates for
Yes.
all of that. Absolutely. And in addition to the question about the plan, I feel strongly that we have set a solid first step for our work. And in part, my belief is that the board helps to onboard the new board members and keep those agreements alive and moving forward. And part of that, in the belief, is that we come back and revisit them and then update them as the board feels necessary.
I think that's great, and thank you for that input. Do other board members have thoughts before we move forward with our final agenda item? I think seeing none, let me just double check the chat because I just switched screens without checking, so my apologies. Board member Levy, did you already, you had your hand up. That's why. Okay, sorry about that. It's from before. Yeah, sorry, I was on a different screen, so I didn't click the thing. All right, so lastly, on our agenda for this evening is just future board development topics and ongoing professional development. There are a couple things I just want to quick run through, and then I would like some feedback from each of you in terms of, and it's not like it's all going to happen at the next one, but within a reasonable amount of time, I'd like to kind of get a pulse from everybody about how frequently you'd like to meet for the continuous board development, and about how many topics, so which really translates to how much time do we want to commit per meeting. So before we get to that though, Spencer mentioned something that I wanted to bring up actually, so thank you for reading my mind. I feel like there is a huge gap between the community's awareness of how, like at large, how the board operates and what our work does in terms of how it impacts the district. And I think for each of us, sometimes I know there's so many. I know Jeff Klett used to say all the time, like people just really don't understand like how much of your life like goes into being a board member. And I thought it might be both informative to the community and maybe affirming, and also a good way for us to monitor like how effective are we being in these goals that we're setting out for ourselves, to do kind of like an annual activity report, like what did we actually accomplish this year. So I just, maybe looking ahead to next year, maybe like when we seat our new board in April, that's something that we want to collect and maybe just do like an annual report on, maybe like in January. I would look to the administration for guidance in terms of like when the best time for that would be, because I don't want to muck up any, I know we have like a calendar for reports and things like that, but I wanted to get some feedback from each of you. Does that sound like something that's appealing, or something that you're like, oh my God, no, for some reason that I hadn't thought of? So does anybody have thoughts or reactions on this? Go ahead, Board Member Levy.
I think we should just make it seamless. And so once a quarter, you check in, if it's through the whole board or through committees or maybe both, and say these were our accomplishments this quarter. So we're not scrambling at the end of the year trying to remember, okay, what did we do last January, February, March, and so on.
That's a great suggestion. Thank you for that. So if we did like a quarterly update, and then that's something that we could work into that board business meetings reports, for example. Does that sound right? Okay, Board Member Jacobs, go ahead, please.
I love that idea, Board Member Levy. I'm going to take it a step further, not just at the board meeting, but could the president just give a brief overview to the paper?
If I am the president, then I would be delighted to, and that is something that in April, when we seat positions, we could discuss, absolutely. Vice President Wong.
What are we going to consider to be noteworthy accomplishments?
That's a great question, and I think that would be something for committees to decide. If I'm taking what Board Member Levy's suggestion, is that, so you want this to kind of be committee driven, so like quarterly, committees would go through like, here are the things we've done. Like we approved X curriculum or whatever. Like, we approved this new HR model that's projected to do this or that, and then maybe align it to our, currently it would be our short-term goals, but then of course moving forward we'll have a strategic plan. Is that kind of what I'm hearing? And then Board Member Jacobs, I'll grab you next.
Yeah, and when you think about what's noteworthy for me, like what has had an impact, and then of course, and is also aligned to our short-term goals and ultimately our strategic plan.
So Vice President Wong, I would say, like, if the committee determines that something has had impact, I don't think anyone is going to scrutinize and say, look, well, no, that wasn't an impact. I mean, I think that the committees know best what happens on the committees. You're the ones that are hearing the exhaustive reports and things like that. Go ahead.
So I'm just thinking budget and planning. I mean, a lot of the stuff that we approve isn't coming up, isn't going to have an impact for a year. So how are we going to address that?
I think that's a great point, and I think that that's something to consider as we reconsider our committee structure. And since this isn't something that's going to take effect right away, I think we have a little wiggle room there. But that's a really great consideration, and I think it's something we should put a pin in and come back to. Board Member Jacobs.
You know what, though, Board Member Wong? I think that's something the community should hear. We are planning for the future. We're not just here and now, but this is what this committee is not just meeting because we're trying to put hours in. You guys do a lot of work, and it's important work. So I guess I think that would be something if I was a private citizen, I'd want to know, hey, this board's got it going. They've got their plan in the future. They're not just looking at the here and now.
Thank you. That's like excellent point. And I'm just going to overuse this phrasing into and just say that adds really good context to kind of like add substance to this whole idea and kind of that vision moving forward. So thank you so much for that, Board Member Jacobs. Does anybody else have any other thoughts, reactions, comments, or questions? All right, so hearing none, I'm looking ahead to the next piece here. Number 2, I've had a couple of board members ask me about renormalizing in-person meetings. So I'm going to give you my 2 cents. If anybody wants to comment or add to that, that's fine. Otherwise, I'm just going to say what I had prepared to say, and then, we can just move on from that, which is just that, I think that everybody has very, like, their own personal and individual situations and should not feel like they need to explain themselves or their choices to anybody. With that said, I would just like, if anybody is comfortable returning in person, I would like people to feel welcome to return in person, but without adding any kind of pressure, spoken or unspoken at all, to change the manner in which you've been attending meetings. Does anybody else have any thoughts or comments on that?
I just want to say that I appreciate that.
Yeah, no problem.
For us, to have that option.
There's a lot of space in this room.
Awesome. Thank you for that update. Go. Okay. Did you have anything else? Anybody? No, we're good. Okay. So awesome. Okay. So lastly, I guess when I had written this list, I didn't, we hadn't had the conversation yet. So I just sort of came up with some examples of like future potential board development topics. For example, I know like one thing for sure, personally, I would like to see an element of at future board development would be like Robert's rules. An example of that would be like, we need to work on our amendments and things have to be seconded and then we can amend a motion, just like kind of for efficiency. And I've gotten some feedback that for minutes taking purposes, it works better that way, would be an example. So maybe just like, if we wanted to have like a brush up on specific parts of Robert's rules, I don't think we need to sit through like a 2.5 hour thing, for example, but that would be an example of some types of topics we could cover. And before I continue on, go ahead, Board Member Levy.
All right. So thank you for bringing up this point. I totally agree with the Robert's Rules refresh, but I really think we need to have a board parliamentarian, and I would be willing to volunteer to go through that training. I just think that is a critical resource that we need as a board.
Great suggestion. Other thoughts? Go ahead, Board Member Jacobs.
Board Member Levy, what would that entail?
So it would entail formal training to become a certified parliamentarian. So like Board President Miller said, there might not be an interest to sit through a 2-hour training, but like somebody needs to do that. So we're not in some cases guessing or leaning on individual interpretation of Robert's rules, that we have clear and consistent direction in that area.
Okay, thank you. That makes sense. I love that idea.
Thank you so much, Board Member Jacobs, and thank you, Board Member Levy, for adding to that. Board Member Delgado?
Won't we still need to have like some type of training for the new board members though?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So I'm sorry to interject, but yeah, we definitely will be doing as a full board ongoing training, all of us in Robert's rules, but rather than sit through like I can't remember how many hours like WASB training, and like I still have all my notes from that and everything. I mean, it's not that it's not useful. It's something that all of us absolutely need to go through. And I think what Board Member Levy is suggesting, but then I'll let you actually speak. So I'm sorry to speak for you, but I think oftentimes boards have parliamentarians. Like it wouldn't just be like a unique thing just to us. You know what I mean? So I guess, yeah.
I totally get that. I totally get that.
Okay.
And I think it's a great idea. And thank you, Board Member Levy, for offering. I think that you will do great on that.
Board Member Levy, do you want to speak to that?
Nope, nothing new to add.
All right, cool. Thanks. Board Member Jacobs?
Okay, I can't resist. I've been good all night. I don't know, Board Member Levy, you know how I feel about Robert's rules. Maybe you and I need to go head-to-head on this one for that training. I'm not sure.
Stephanie, that is too absurd to reply to.
Okay, I can't say much more. Okay, thank you. I opened myself wide open for that one.
I don't know how to even respond to that one. Board Member Levy, I think that's a great idea, and I like the idea of the board appointing a board parliamentarian, and I would even open it up that if any board members want to go through the training and still, Board Member Levy is the first to speak, so I fully support her taking that, but I would even be one to go to that training as well. I would love to know more about that.
I really appreciate that, Dr. Keister. And I mean, I would just say like, yeah, I guess I want to just make sure that I don't want to diminish the importance of the full board, like knowing Robert's rules, having ongoing training and refreshers, absolutely still a thing. And I just want to echo that I think that's an outstanding idea. So if everybody else is cool with that, we'll just follow up on next steps. Parliamentarian Levy. So if that's cool, we can kind of move that forward for sure. Does anybody else? I was just basically all I was going to do is just say like, here's some different possible topics for ongoing professional development for us as a board. So that's a really cool thing that just happened. I did note down earlier, I think that one of the next things that we'll need to do is do continued work on how do we either align our different government styles to either move closer together, or how do we work within the existing framework of our current positions to improve just like the efficiency and just the effectiveness of board government, kind of going back to that chart that we looked at with the columns. That would be like one of my suggestions. Would anybody else, I guess I'll just kind of round robin, if anybody else wants to offer up a possible sooner rather than later, I guess, next topic for a board development subject matter. This would be in addition to an onboarding piece for our new board members. Go ahead, Spencer.
I think one that would be great would be on like doing a workshop on how to effectively write like strategic plans, and just because that's going to be the next big thing that we have to work on.
Awesome, thank you. I've noted that along with our parliamentarian piece and Robert's rules, and along with kind of board governance styles. All right, I'm going to go to Board Member Jacobs next. Did you have thoughts?
I would love something on poverty.
Thank you very much, Board Member Jacobs. Dr. Keister, did you have anything you'd like to suggest?
I don't have a particular topic, but something for us to consider. I believe very strongly in what you just said in terms of how do we improve ourselves, and believe strongly in the coaching model. So you suggest that a suggestion to make is would we benefit from regular facilitator, coaching facilitator to help us become better as a team?
Excellent. Thank you very much. And just as I go through here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put all these together, and then when we have our discussion for next time we meet, we can, I don't think we're going to like decide tonight what's going to happen next. This is just like to lay everything out on the table, and once we get some dates down, we'll discuss from there. Go ahead, Board Member Levy.
And stop me if I'm jumping ahead, but as I'm looking at number 4, cultural competencies, thank you, Board Member Jacobs, for that addition. I would like to see that rolled out as a series and not all at once, but I think that the first thing that's listed is a great place to start, barriers for school success for Latino students. I would also like to include African American students, our students that are experiencing poverty, as Board Member Jacobs just mentioned, and also within that poverty sector, our students that are experiencing homelessness, and then also our students with disabilities. And so if we could do that as a series, I think that would be really helpful. And it doesn't all have to be meeting time spent with a presentation, but it could be selected readings, and then we touch base just to debrief so that we're efficient with our use of time when we're together.
No, I would like to echo that and add as well. I mean, I think that there are a lot of current topics that affect kids in a variety of ways. And like one thing that comes to mind, for example, is there have been some court rulings lately, and there's one going on in Wisconsin right now about, for example, like students who are trans and their participation in the athletic program. So I would fully support an ongoing series, and I think also with some attention to the timeliness of issues, because we have a lot of kids who are marginalized in a variety of ways. And I think that the board should be aware of that. I would fully agree. Board Member Jacobs?
I like all the things that you added, Board Member Levy, and I just remembered, didn't Principal Vrydogs offer up, you guys are nodding your head. I'm forgetting her name, but perhaps she could do a presentation to the board or something along that line. Dr. Kieser, I'm blanking on her name. Could you help me out with that?
Are you talking about Amanda Goodenough?
I'm sorry, one more time?
Amanda Goodenough?
Yes.
Yes. She's actually done a couple of series with our district staff, and they've learned a lot and are asking her back again. Yes.
Yes, thank you, Board Member Levy.
So I would just like to add, if we have the opportunity to bring in Amanda Goodenough, we should definitely pursue that. Working with her for the Racial Justice Conference, she's one of our breakout speakers for microaggressions, and she is fantastic as far as content and personality.
Thank
yes,
you.
And yes.
Sorry. I was going to say thank you for that feedback. Sorry for interrupting. But yeah, no, that's awesome. Yeah, that was a little extra of me. Sorry. All right, cool. So we are good. Okay, so wait, hold on. So we have Spencer, Stephanie, Dr. Kieser. Okay, Board Member Wong, did you have anything you wanted to add? All right, Board Member Delgado, did you have anything you wanted to add?
No, I just want to echo what Board Member Levy stated about Ms. Goodenough. I think she would be great to do something with us and work with us.
Thank you so much for that. Yeah, and I mean, I'm just going to stay open on this one. I'm not going to add anything. I mean, I think I already kind of my 2 cents in there with the board governance styles piece. I think the idea of series work is a really great model to take in general as this is formulating, because I mean, if we have continuous, so just like we want to see our agendas and our work that we do align with our district goals, align with, everything should be centered on, student outcomes, right? And so in that same vein, if all of our board development work has kind of like continuously common threads, we can get really good at the things that we prioritize, right? And so like if there's always, I don't know if we can broad brush just use the terminology like cultural competency, like strand in every board development. If there is like a, Robert's rules kind of meetings like strand and, efficiency and effectiveness. And that's something that I think we can talk about next time. I guess I just wanted to reflect and react to, I really like what I'm hearing in terms of like how we want to move forward in that process. So that sounds really good. Board Member Levy, did I miss a question mark from you?
No, the idea just popped into my head. And I am not trying to create an excessive amount of work for Secretary Shope, but if we could have a section on board docs, and I'm thinking about this as I'm saying it, so it's not, I'm not completely married to how we execute this, but have like a library portion. And so if we come across articles or books or a podcast or something, like no pressure, drop it in there. And I think we should have the formalized kind of series, but if there are additional things in an informal way, if you are just curious to see what other board members are reading, hearing, listening to, I think that would be a great repository of where we house information that all of us would have access to.
Thank you so much for that, Board Member Levy. I love the idea of us doing like board member Goodreads pages, but like truly what we could do is I'll work with Ms. Shope. I like the idea of us having like our own space to share with each other. And that way, like, it would be nice, like, I know like in the past, like when we've done conferences, for example, like we wanted to carve out space in meetings to report back on that because that's, money that the district paid that we're investing in to invest in our district and our board operations. So I want to have a little more time to think about it because it's a really good idea. So I think definitely we can put that in the library because Ms. Shope is nodding at me profusely like, yes, absolutely, that's a thing. But I also want to give some consideration to, as our meetings become more efficient, we could carve out some space, just like some concise space to just doing some report out, like here's what we've learned. Like I know Kyle tried to bring up like what the city council does this where they say like, hey, this is what I've been up to for the last month. And I mean, it's a pandemic, so I feel like we're not going to do that so much right now. Maybe as the tides change, we will, but maybe we could use that space otherwise for board member reports and just to give space once a month to say like, here's something that I learned about whatever, here's something that I read, but I want to do it in a way that doesn't pressure people because as you pointed out, Board Member Levy, we all have different jobs and professions. Some of us have busy seasons and things like that. So if we do that, I just also want to normalize for people that if you don't have anything to report out, you don't get like a demerit. Like it's fine. So let's give some more thought to that. I really like where you're going at that. Board Member Jacobs?
Just a quick thought, all of these things that we're talking about could also be added. They would also be something that we could add on our quarterly updates to the public. Because as we know, our school board needs a new image. And we're getting there. We just have to keep plugging away and get that word out.
I absolutely love that idea, Board Member Jacobs. So if we gave an opportunity for like, and well, we're going to have to, my English teacher is coming out a little bit because I want to come up with some cute little like acronym or something like board member something that's like alliterative for us to like say like, here's something that we have to share, this quarter that's, meaningful that we learned or that we're participating in. So I'd like some more time to mull that over. But I think that is in addition to everything we've heard, also a fabulous idea. So thank you for putting that forward. All right, at this time, let me just double check back because I'm definitely going to check in with everybody again to see if anybody else has anything to add. Yeah, there are 2 attached articles. One of them is a general cultural competency article that was shared with me from not our racial justice conference, but a different racial justice conference that I found useful. I've read it through a few times. My 9-year-old and I looked it over actually a couple months ago. We were talking about being kind to others, and I got a lot out of it, so I just wanted to pass it along and share it. And then, there, as Board Member Levy pointed out, there's also another article in here about school success for Latino students, and I included these 2 things as examples of the types of, between board development type reading that we can do. I know like a jillion years ago when we did a board norm session last spring, it might have been one of our first virtual meetings actually, to go down a little nostalgia track here. we talked about doing like a book club kind of thing where we would do, and I know that with the pandemic and with everybody's kind of like competing capacities to keep up with the different obligations that we all have, I think it's probably a little bit beyond our capacity to do like whole books, but I thought offering up articles might be useful. So that wasn't before we had this discussion, but now that we have had this discussion with this library idea, I think that's probably a better place for that to occur. So these are just examples of things that I thought would be useful for the types of things for us to share. And I think we've kind of covered this pretty thoroughly, right, in terms of sharing resources and finding them. So I just wanted to finish out kind of what was on our agenda there. So before we adjourn, I want to give everybody else an opportunity to offer up some final thoughts, any other questions or reflections that we might have for this evening. So I'm not going to call on everybody. If you want to add anything, just please put a question mark in the chat. All right. Go ahead. Yep. Thank you. Go ahead, Board Member Delgado.
I just want to say thank you. Thank you for doing this. This was very helpful, insightful, and I really enjoyed the time that we spent today. I think it was very productive.
Oh, I thank you very much for saying so. And I actually was just going to thank all of you for the exact same thing. This might be the absolute favorite board meeting I've ever been in. And I just truly appreciate, and I mean, I really mean what I said. I approach this with a lot of humility. I think I've learned a lot from all of you, and I really am glad to have the opportunity to serve on this board, and I'm really excited for all the good work that we're going to continue to do together. Does anybody else have any other thoughts, feedback, reactions, reflections, anything for the good of the group?
No, I just want to.
Go ahead.
Sorry, I just want to echo the same sentiments. I think this, as I said before, this is, I think, the first step in the direction that we all want to head, and so I look forward to the journey.
Thank you. And I would like to note that it is not even 10 o'clock yet. So thank you so much for all of that. I think we've done some great work. I hope you have a beautiful evening with all of your families. And I just really want to thank you all. So we will see you on, let's see, Tuesday, I think is our next. Did I get that right? All right. We'll see everybody Tuesday evening for closed session items. And yeah, just wish you all well. And thanks again for your work tonight. Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Jacob, second by Levy. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, good night. Thanks, everybody.